I'm going to make $1 million before graduating high school, and this YouTube channel is going to document the whole process.
In this video, I'm going to show you a few real clips from Zach's journey and highlight 10 lessons we can learn from his story so far. Some of them are startup lessons, some of them are mindset lessons, and a few of them apply to almost anything you want to achieve in life. Let's start with the first one, setting clear goals. When Zach said he wanted to make $1 million before finishing high school, it sounded bold, but it wasn't random. If you look closely, that goal actually follows a principle many successful people use, the SMART goal framework. His goal was specific, it was measurable, and it was time-bound. He didn't say, I want to be successful someday. He said, I want to make $1 million before I graduate from high school. And at the time, it wasn't completely unrealistic either. He had already sold a startup for $100,000, so he could actually see the path to $1 million. Clear goals may not actually guarantee success, but they give you a direction. It's the same reason athletes like Michael Phelps set exact medal targets instead of simply saying, I want to do well. Goals help you narrow down on what exactly you want to be focused on and to avoid other distractions. The second lesson is something many founders learn too late. Building the product is only half the journey. Getting people to see it is the other half. When Zach and his team built CalAI, they pushed hard on distribution. In their first week, they spent $2,000 testing user acceptance. They also worked with influencers and they experimented social media marketing. And they even sponsored a video from Mr. Beast, one of the biggest creators on YouTube. This is because a great product with no distribution often goes nowhere, but a good product with strong distribution can go very far. Take for instance Microsoft Teams vs Slack. Slack pioneered the space, but Microsoft had the distribution through Office and enterprise customers, and Teams eventually overtook Slack. Another example is Instagram vs Snapchat. Both had similar features at one point, but Instagram's scale and distribution gave it a massive advantage. But even before the marketing and before the growth, Zach already had overcome something that stops many people: the fear of putting themselves out there. Most people have ideas, but they hesitate. They worry about what people would think, whether the idea would fail, and whether they are good enough at all. Zach simply started building and sharing things publicly. And if you want to build anything meaningful, you have to accept the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes you will fail in public. Even founders like Elon Musk launched rockets that exploded before SpaceX eventually succeeded. Number 4, don't be afraid to try new things. One thing that stands out about Zach is his willingness to try things outside his comfort zone. Recently, after selling his startup for $100 million, he eventually released a music track. Now, that might sound unrelated to tech, but it shows something important. He's comfortable starting things even when he has no experience. He's comfortable doing the uncomfortable. And honestly, many of us become more cautious as we get older, more self-conscious, but progress often comes from simply being willing to try. It's similar to how Donald Glover moved between acting, comedy, writing, and music instead of staying just in one lane. And interestingly, one of the next lessons is actually the idea that eventually helped Zach to build a company generating over $1.5 million per month. After attending a coding bootcamp, Zach didn't just stop learning. He went online and continued teaching himself. He watched tutorials on YouTube and joined developer communities. And most importantly, he learned by building things himself. Today, the internet gives you access to knowledge that used to be locked inside universities. Many world-class developers today learn through platforms like YouTube and GitHub. But the key difference is initiative. The skills that change your life are often things you choose to learn on your own. So never stop learning. One surprising part of Zach's story is how early he started making money. At just 10 years old, he began tutoring other students in coding, and he charged them $30 per hour. Now, that might not sound like a huge startup, but it taught him something important: communication, teaching, and how to price his work. Small projects often become the training ground for much bigger ones. So don't despise the little beginnings. The little things you build today may be the stepping stone for the future that you've always wanted. When Zach was in school, the Wi-Fi blocked gaming websites. Most students just moved on, but Zach didn't. Instead, he built a website called Totally Science that allows students to play games directly in their browser. What looked like a small annoyance to everybody else looked like an opportunity to him. Entrepreneurs often see problems differently, not as something to complain about, but as something to solve. It's similar to how the founders of Airbnb started their company because they couldn't afford rent. The problems and challenges that you are experiencing today are probably being experienced by millions of people all around the world too. So, imagine how much you could make if you solved that problem for everybody else. Another thing to note is that failure is part of the process. After selling his first startup, Zach started another project called Life Counts, but this one didn't work. The platform struggled to gain users and it eventually shut down. And honestly, that's completely normal. Every successful founder builds things that fail. For example, Mark Zuckerberg invested billions into the metaverse, but the whole thing failed, even worse than people expected. But Mark still moves on. Failure is often just a part of discovering what works. If you treat failure like data, it often becomes a step towards success. The ninth lesson I've learned from Zach Yadegari is to solve problems you personally experience. The idea for CalAI came from a personal frustration. Zach was going to the gym and trying to track calories using other apps, but logging food manually was slow and annoying. So he asked a simple question. What if you could just take a photo of the food and let AI estimate the calories? That simple idea eventually became the product. Now, many successful startups start exactly this way. For example, Uber started because its founders struggled to get a taxi in Paris. So ask yourself, what are you struggling with today? Our final lesson is the fact that institutions don't always predict success. Despite having a 4.0 GPA and a 34 ACT score, Zach was rejected by most Ivy League schools. But while those decisions were happening, his company was already generating over $1.5 million per month. It's a reminder that traditional institutions don't always measure the same things that matter in the real world. And for you as a founder, that might even mean rejection from investors or accelerators like Y Combinator. But rejection doesn't always mean failure. There are many companies that have been rejected by YC, for instance, that have still gone on to become successful companies afterwards. Even Michael and Dalton talk about it a lot. So, to the final thoughts, if Zach's story teaches us